professional baseball. And I was like, well, that's a good summer job. How did that even happen?
Well, I played a season before I started coaching you guys. I played in the summer '99, so kind of a summer between undergrad and grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't go as well as I wanted to, so I always said if I had a chance, I'd go back. So the day after school ended that year, I drove up to Broxton, Massachusetts, and just had a tryout and threw well and got signed, and away we went. So,
which at that point you're teaching full time, you're coaching, and so it's not like you were training all year to play professional baseball.
Just a little BP to you guys.
Crazy how that worked. So, how many years have you been the head coach at Bridgewater now?
Head coach, this will be my 13th year.
It's crazy how fast it goes.
Yeah, it goes really fast.
Really fast. And you've been teaching how many years?
This is my 18th year, so 18th year coaching overall. So I volunteered for 2 and then did freshman for 3, and now this will be 13th year with Varsity.
13th on the Varsity program. So I want to get into a lot with you and a lot about, there's so much in the news now about arm care and different things, and I think what's interesting with your perspective is you're obviously the coach, but you still play.
I do.
You still throw, pretty competitively,
mm-hmm.
right, in a men's league. So you, and you played professionally and you played in college. So I know the big change since I've been in high school is the pitch count rule, right?
Right. It used to be days, and now it's done by pitches.
What do you think about that? How's it going? Because I've been out. I don't know. So you tell me what's going on.
Basically, what the rule did is it condensed everything, or I should say expanded everything by a day, where before you might have needed 2 days. Now, basically, if you throw the same amount of innings, the pitches may differ, but it equates to 1 more day of rest needed. So I'm fine with it. I've never been a coach that abuses arms. Always safety over everything else. But for me, I like to, because I pitched, I have the perspective where it's not always how many pitches you throw, it's the type of pitches that you throw. So I've thrown in games where I've thrown 110 pitches and we won 10-0, and I felt fine the next day. I've also thrown in games where I've only thrown, say, 80 pitches, but it's been a 1-0 game, and all those pitches are a lot of tension involved in them, and I feel like I got hit by a truck the next day. So I always kind of take into account the game situations as well as the number of pitches.
How, as a high school coach, you only have the kids for basically 3 months out of the year,
mm-hmm.
And obviously we always talk about arm injuries. Like, how much control do you actually have on it? How do you view it when most of the time these kids are playing fall, spring, summer, and they're coming to you for a portion of the season? How do you deal with that?
Well, it used to be we had them for about 6 months with summer ball, but summer ball's transitions, I should say, from them playing for their school teams to playing for these AAU and select teams, which is fine. It's a little bit different, but we kind of have a schedule that we put in place, starting with tryouts, even from tryouts, so many pitches this day, so many pitches that day, and we try to get them all on a schedule and look at our scrimmage schedule and get everything planned out, so it's a gradual building process. The worst thing you can do is stress the arm too soon, too early, and then it kind of actually sets you back because then they have to recover from that. So if you have a plan in place, it makes a lot more sense, and you really need to stick to that plan, especially early in the year.
How do you do that with, because I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, you want the kids throwing before you can officially work with them, or not really?
Yeah, most of them do some sort of winter program. We can't be involved at all in what they do baseball-wise outside our coaching window. So most of them are going to one of the baseball schools and throwing a little bit, but even with that, that's completely different from competing in a stressful situation. Yeah. So we're always more safe than sorry, and we will. I'll take a kid out even if it means bringing someone in who's not quite as good or not as experienced. It might cost us the game, but early in the season, I'd rather save an arm than kill an arm just to win one game.
So you basically, from the time you get the kids in, I guess, what is it, March, right?
Get the kids, first Friday in March.
And then you have about a month before season starts?
This year, it depends. It's always the first Friday in March. So last year was March 1st. This year it's March 6th. Yeah. So it varies in the year, but 3 to 4 weeks.
In a perfect world, if you could throw the rules out the window, what would be an ideal build up to the season to get them ready to go?
Ideal world, we'd have another 2 weeks and you just build up from there. But we get their 2 throwing sessions in tryouts, which are a certain amount of pitches in a controlled environment. And then 2 days after tryouts end, scrimmage season starts. So then it's like an inning or 2 at a time. And then the next week is 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, depending on whether they're going to be a starter or a reliever.
Yeah.
And hopefully by the last week of scrimmages, they're up to, say, 4 innings, 4 or 5 innings at most, and then you go from there. But
do you has there been over the course of your career as a head coach, have you maybe seen like where guys are more banged up than I thought and changed things, or you've kind of had the same plan since you started?
You try to stick to a certain plan that you think works, but some of the kids are going to be more sore than others. We had a player last year, a few years ago, I'm not going to name names, but real tall, skinny kid, and just was prone to tendonitis just because he didn't have the body build to make. He threw hard, and that stress wasn't so much that he was doing anything wrong. It was just his body was moving faster than it was capable of healing. So you have to look at the individual player. Some kids have more durable arms. Some kids have had injuries in the past, and you just have to play it by ear and take the safety of each player into account.
Do you? I've always thought that like baseball in the Northeast should be played in the fall, because I mean the spring it's just by March it's freezing. Like April it's okay, and then usually by the time it gets nice, the high school season's over.
Yeah, there's arguments for that, but also you want to be playing the most important games when the weather's nice. If you flip that to the fall, your most important games could be in crappy weather.
Right.
So depends. I know in Pennsylvania they have golf in the fall, where in New Jersey they have golf in the spring, but a lot of that has to do with course availability. But
sure.
I'm fine with having it in the spring. Next year, in fact, they're moving it back a little bit. So we're starting mid-March, and then they're moving state championships back another week. So it'll be a little bit better. At least we won't start the regular season until I think the second week in April, which is a little bit better. I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a good thing. I mean, you played college baseball in Ohio. I played in New Jersey, and I mean you're outside in February shoveling the field and going out. It's like, what the hell am I doing? This is crazy, right?
Yeah, it's pretty. As a pitcher, I didn't mind throwing in the cold because I would throw inside, and gave me an advantage. If I convinced myself mentally I wasn't cold,
yeah,
it was fine. But yeah, playing baseball in the cold is not the greatest thing.
Not ideal. Talk to me about because you mentioned AAU or travel ball at this point. How much involvement do you have in college selection and sending kids to college at this point?
I will help them in any way possible and make contacts as much as they want me to get involved. I will get involved. Some of them do everything kind of on their own through their summer coaches. Some ask me for help, but it's you only have a few players a year that are going to be able to play at the college level. But if they need help, you should be always more than willing to help, which I am.
Good. I remember. So you played at Baldwin Wallace.
Correct.
And then I can't remember the exact story, but at some point you could have transferred D1 because you did so well there, right?
Correct. Yeah, I had a really good freshman year. I started as a freshman and then played on a summer select team that was mostly D1 kids, and we played all over the country. And I was told that a couple coaches from a couple bigger schools were interested, but I was still kind of small and not throwing super hard, but I wanted to stay where I was comfortable and where I knew I was going to start.
So that being said, I think it's interesting because you have a unique perspective on it. How do you counsel? We had the Watchung Hills Jim Huff wrestling coach on and asked him a similar question. When kids are looking D1, D2, D3, and I remember being a high school kid, every kid wants to go big time, right? And you had the experience of playing at a small school but being very successful and even had an opportunity to move up. So, what would your advice be to a kid or a parent that might be in a similar situation?
It's what's important to you. To me, I wanted to play, and I wanted to succeed. To me, pitching, being a starting pitcher on my college team was something that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to do that more than say go to a bigger school and be the last arm out of the bullpen. But some people want to go to a big school and want the big school experience. I think it all depends on what you're looking for out of your college experience. But my I say to my coaches and parents all the time, if you're good enough, they're going to find you. And
Sure.
and even if they don't find you, there's tryouts that you can go to. I got signed out of a tryout. So if you think you're good enough, hey, go pay your $50 and go to the tryout and roll the dice and see what happens.
And you mean good enough get to the professional level?
Yeah, professional level. College level, for the most part, if you're good enough, they're going to find you, especially for the D1. Now, D3, you have to do a little self-recruiting sometimes, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as like playing time and when kids talk to you, my experience, and then you, same thing, when you play at like an upper Division III school, a lot of times it's like, do I want to do that, or do I want to go to a lower D1 school and see how that, so when you're talking to a kid, how do you kind of counsel them on what to really look for?
Once again, it comes down to the kid themselves. Some kids, think that they really want to give it a shot at D1, and if you really want to, go for it. Yeah. But for the most part, if you're going to be successful at D1, you kind of know. Now I was a rare case where I improved a tremendous amount in college because I was very small physically coming out of high school. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of cases, that's not going to be what happens.
Sure.
But it all comes down to, do you want to go play D1 and maybe not play and compete, but D3, even the better schools, it's really good baseball. Yeah. And to me, I wanted to play. I mean, I would have competed for a spot wherever I went, mm-hmm. but I wanted to be on the field and compete, and because there's only so much time you have to do that.
Right.
And you got to be honest with yourself too.
Yeah, which is hard to do, especially when you have a lot of other influences,
yes.
Right?
Yes, being honest with yourself is sometimes the hardest thing to do.
And I think, you mentioned that it used to be the summer ball when I was there, it was like with the high school program, but now, and good for them, it's a business any business, when you have more success, more kids go D1, your business looks better, right? And so there might be a push towards that, even if it might not be the best thing for people.
Yeah, the summer ball thing is interesting because you're paying them to play. Like when you played for our summer teams, it was maybe $300 and that covered the umpires and your jersey. Now you're paying thousands of dollars to play for these teams, and that's great because you're going to get to travel, you're going to get exposure, but at the same time, are people telling you things just because you're paying them, or are they being 100% completely honest with you? Are they telling you things that you want to hear just so you continue to pay?
Sure.
Now, I like to think that most summer programs are above that, but there's definitely some that
sure.
aren't. Yeah.
If I came to you and I said, Coach, I want to be the best baseball player I can be, tell me what my 12-month schedule would look like. Does that mean I should play another sport? Does that mean I should play fall baseball? Does it mean I should weight lift? What would you counsel someone at this point?
To me, you should play other sports. You should definitely play other sports, and you should take some time off from baseball.
Okay. Not
a ton of time, but there is some time during the year where you should have some downtime. But I love when we have guys that compete in other sports. Because to me, there's not enough competition. There's summer ball competition, but you're playing with guys you don't know, and you're playing for yourself in these showcase events. But if you're playing for your town high school team in another sport with the guys you grew up with, and you're trying to win championships, that's competing at a different level.
Yeah. And
I think it prepares you mentally. Mental preparation is just as important as physical preparation, and also using muscles that you might not use in baseball and say football or basketball or soccer is important too, to not overuse certain muscle groups.
Tell me about the mental side of it. We're actually going to interview a sports psychologist soon, and it's Dr. Nick Molinaro, and he always says that's the missing link in most athletics. We have strength and conditioning, we have our skill practice, but the mental side of it, which you and I both know is so important. How do you go about addressing that with the team, and what do you do for it?
Well, especially in baseball, where it's a one-on-one type situation, whether you're a batter against a pitcher against a batter, it's hard at least for younger players to block out all the noise and stay focused at one pitch at a time.
Yeah.
And I think controlling your breathing is incredibly important, and just slowing things down. But yeah, we recommend every year that our players read a book called The Mental Game of Baseball by Harvey Dorfman.
Mm-hmm.
Famous sports psychologist. He passed away a few years ago, but he worked with Roy Halladay famously, among others.
Mm-hmm.
But just not letting the game get too fast, and staying in the moment. And you hear this all the time. It's you're worrying about the process, not the results. And stay process oriented. And just because something doesn't work one time doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. You just have to stay dedicated to what you do. And I think one of the reasons why I had success in my playing career, and still do, is that I stay process oriented and stay in my mechanics, and trust in the things that I've worked on, and trust that they're going to carry over into the game, and not let one bad pitch affect the next one.
Right. And the thing with, I always thought football when I played was always easier because you're away from everything and it's like kind of louder, there's more people. Baseball, it's 4 o'clock on a Thursday, like there's 15 people there, but if they're loud and screaming at you on the field, you can hear all of them.
Yeah, and you also can't go hit somebody if you're frustrated.
Yeah, that's right.
You take a big swing and a miss, strike 3, you're out. Now you got to sit in the dugout, go back in the field, and some of the biggest things we talk about is not taking your at-bats into the field, or not carrying over to your next at-bat, and that's tough for teenagers.
Sure.
That's tough for major league players. Yeah,
exactly. What do you've been doing it 10, 15 years almost now. What are lessons that you've learned, I guess, from when you first started coaching to now?
That I constantly remind myself that the game is incredibly hard. So when these teenagers make mistakes, it's not like they're trying to make a mistake, and the realization that it's a really, really hard game, and that you have to know when to criticize, you have to know when to pick up, and that's just a feel thing as you get with coaching. I think early on, all young coaches are a little bit more too intense, are more intense than they need to be, and they need to take a step back and remember that it's really hard. And I think that's the one thing that still playing allows me to keep that perspective.
I remember I asked you that years ago, and I probably don't remember the conversation, but you said one of the things I realized as a coach was that everyone's not a 1%er like me, and not that they're not that talent wise, but that you love baseball like I did so much, and it's easy to almost resent the other people if they don't feel the same way as you, and that doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that it's not important, and they still want to be there, but it's not the same.
Right. There's a different mentality that people who are really into it, who are and it's specific with baseball especially, and even football because all the film study and all that stuff. But you're either into it or you're not, and if you're not, that doesn't mean you can't be a bad player or you can't be a good player. Doesn't mean you're going to be a bad player, but it's that extra that you're willing to give and willing to do, and just because you love it so much.
And then not everyone has that.
No.
But again, it's impossible to have a team. I mean, it probably wouldn't even be so good if you had a full team of that anyway,
Right.
I always learned lessons from the kids that a lot of times they would almost do better because they didn't care as much and it wouldn't affect them, right?
Yeah, there's people that you just, they're just like out there having fun, and they're not worried about things that people who are really into it. But at the same time, their ceiling's going to be lower because they're not not going to put in the time and effort.
That's right. Talk to me about the upcoming season for Bridgewater High School 2020. What does it look like for you?
We're excited about this season. We had a good season last year with a pretty young team, and we have a lot of arms left or back. So this will probably be the most pitching depth that we ever had, which, especially in this day and age with the pitch count, you can't have enough pitching. So we have a lot of pitching. We're excited about that. Offensively, we have to improve a little bit, but we have some guys back that have the potential to do that. So we 15 wins last year, and hopefully at least equal that, if not more. So.
I finished playing right around when they changed the bats, going back a little bit now. It's been a while. Is the game much different now when they the idea was it was going to feel more like wood, it wasn't going to be these big high scoring games? Has it changed or not really?
Yeah, there was the big change was from these like the composite barrels. There were a couple years where it was just ridiculous. It was like hitting with trampolines.
Yep.
And now since I went to the BB core bats, it's you gotta put a good swing on it to get the ball out. It's
Right.
not just stick your bat out and the ball jumps off of it. So the bats have made a difference, yes.
And the pitching, I'm assuming, is better because the bats aren't as good.
The one thing that I've seen throughout the years, even from when I played back 25 years ago, is that the pitching depth is better, especially with the bigger schools. That instead of just having one or two arms that are really good, and then whoever else comes in is just trying to get the ball to the plate.
Yeah.
Teams have 3-4 good pitchers now,
Yeah.
and it's not so much that the top pitchers are that much better than the top pitchers before, but just overall depth.
More people, more kids that can do it.
Yeah.
And around here, I think there's just really, really good competition. Correct? I mean, I feel like Hunter and Central always got kids.
Yeah. New Jersey baseball in general is very good.
Yeah.
North, south, wherever you go, it's really good baseball.
And I guess not surprising, maybe surprising because for a Northeast state, how much talent there is here.
Yeah, I mean it's the most densely populated state in the country, so there's lots of kids playing. But the more and more baseball schools, indoor facilities. Like I said, the ability to travel in the summer now on these teams, better competition. So and just as the years go by, coaches get more knowledge, and you gotta be into it now if you're gonna win.
What's the interest level in Bridgewater now? It's such a huge town, so there's always so many kids, but obviously it's always been a lacrosse town. Since you started coaching, is it the same kind of amount of kids coming out? You see it dwindling, increasing? What do you see?
Yeah, we usually give it about the same, plus or minus 10 kids every year at tryouts. But with public school, you never know what you're gonna get, and
Right.
you just go and you work with those kids the best you can, and
Right.
some years you have more talent than others.
Right. Do you guys feel it out here? My other office is in Union County, and there's a lot of the public schools lose to the privates. Do you lose a lot or not so much?
We'll lose a couple kids a year, but it's they were probably going to go to private school their entire life, so you don't look at it like, oh, this kid went to this school and we could have been so much better with him. Well, he's never going to come anyway. So
Right.
you worry about what you have and what you don't have.
Sure. So let's transition a little bit. You teach in the business department at Bridgewater
I
High
do.
School, but on the side, you're an entrepreneur.
I am.
So it's interesting because most teachers aren't. They teach. So what's that about? How did you have the entrepreneurial bug, spirit, and we'll show some of your stuff on. We have the camera going.
Well, there's a few teachers at school that have their own side gigs, whether they run it or not, or they whatever. But I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I had a business education, I teach business education. I had a business administration degree from undergrad, and then I went to grad school for sports marketing.
Okay.
And did that for a few years, and then moved back to New Jersey to teach through the alternate route program. But I always wanted to start a business, specifically a golf business. Golf is the other thing that I really enjoyed. And I had several ideas through the years, and nothing really stuck until I kind of came up with this. And it just so happened that everything kind of fell into place and got it started. We launched last November of 18, and then so far so good with it.
Talk to me about the genesis of Stymie.
So
Is how you pronounce it?
it's Stymie Golf Supply is the name of the company, and I was looking for a golf term that was kind of a vintage, because we wanted to do a little vintage look with our stuff. And I've always been fascinated by branding, so I wanted the logo to look a certain way, and have a icon with the word mark and all that. So everything kind of worked out. But Stymie is an old golf term where prior to 1952, I think is the last year that it was in effect, you didn't mark your ball on the green. There was a lot more match play back in the day. So if you had your putt and you putted your ball in front of somebody else's, and between their ball and the hole, they were considered stymied. So they had to try to go over your ball.
Is that right?
Yeah, or they could knock your ball out of the way, but then you could replace your ball. So you could actually block a person from getting their putt into the hole,
Really?
as opposed to trying to make your putt.
And then around that time, they gave you marked the ball.
Yeah, 1952 I think was the last year that they used it in competition.
Interesting. And so you started the business, but I'm interested because my businesses are really, I need a table and a room somewhere. You have to make, produce. How does all that work? When you started like making the hats and doing all the supplies and doing all this stuff.
Right, a lot of it's just doing research and finding companies that will make the stuff and do private branding, but the hats and the tees and the t-shirts are all supplemental to just help the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Our main product is the head covers themselves and the valuables bags. So that was just a matter of sourcing the fabric, and then my mother is a seamstress. So
is that right?
So we did the prototyping during the summer of 2018, and went through a bunch of iterations of different types of head covers and shapes and sizes, and came up with the one that we liked the best, which was the barrel shape.
Uh-huh.
And then I source all the fabric mostly out of New York City, and then she does the sewing.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so most of your sales are through Instagram?
That's our main marketing tool is Instagram.
Mhm.
So we have the website, so the sales go through the website. But yeah, most of the referrals are through the Instagram page. It's
Okay.
just the tool that I found the easiest to use.
Seems like, we talked about Nick before, a golf coach, and most of his business is through Instagram
Mhm.
at this point, so
Yeah.
it's a real thing. How's it going so far for you?
It's going really well. I mean, we've been around for, like I said, a little over a year now.
Yeah.
We've gotten direct-to-consumer sales on the website have been great, and then a few golf courses have reached out for us. So we did our first order for a golf course was for Newill, which is in northeast Colorado. They're the 48th ranked course in the country, so
Wow.
we did an order for them last year. We worked through a company called Country Club Collective, and they got a corporate order for us through or with Continental Tire. So
Mhm.
we've been it's been progressing really well, considering it's not a full-time gig yet.
Well, interesting. Yeah. Do you ever think about like not leaving, but what I could do if you had more time?
Yes and no. I mean, there's only so much growth that you can do without forcing it and without investing a ton of money in it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow it responsibly, at least fiscally responsibly on my end.
Yeah.
And I still enjoy the teaching and the coaching. So I'm single and I don't have any kids, so I have enough time to do everything. The only
Yeah.
time that time is a little crunched is during baseball season.
Do you, I would assume just logistically, if tomorrow you happen to grow rapidly, like production might be an issue?
Yes and no. We have contingency plans lined up should we get a few large orders and have
Yeah.
to get them done.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we've kind of planned for some growth.
It's interesting because you teach micro and macroeconomics in
Yes.
school, and I never took those. Because at the time I wasn't interested in business because I thought I was going to do this, and now I realize like
Everything's a business.
and I enjoy it too, and I really like the business side of it. But the other part, a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, one of the downfalls of that when you go to college is you're get a business degree, and it doesn't teach you anything about how to run a small business. It's kind of like how to work for a Fortune 500 company. Have you found that you or your experience running a business has helped your teaching too?
It gives you a different perspective on things.
Yeah.
There's textbook stuff and then there's real world stuff.
Yeah.
And being able to speak about the real world stuff and experiences that I've had in dealing with customers or dealing with clients and dealing with suppliers, dealing with the postal service.
Yeah.
All that stuff is, I think, valuable that if you could bring it to the classroom and fit it into your lessons.
I remember one of my college teammates, he's my financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, and I remember the one day we were talking about marketing, and I was like, what are you doing for marketing? He's like, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to set up a booth at this local fair, and I'm going to bring, I was like, what are you going to bring? What material? He's like, I'm going to bring all my pamphlets and everything like that. And I'm thinking to myself, it's so easy, because if you just go in the closet and get the pamphlets that Morgan Stanley has for you, here we have to create the pamphlets. Like,
Yeah.
there's no box.
Correct.
All the stuff here we've created, so it's a different world when you're like, oh crap, how does that actually happen? I'm sure you've had to deal with the same thing, the design, supplies, all the stuff that just kind of comes easy if you're in a big corporate setting that you don't really have. in your setting, right?
Yeah, I mean, corporations are paying people to do that as their job.
Yeah.
You as a small business owner, you're the marketing department, you're the accounting department, you're the public relations department, you're everything.
Right.
So.
And then the other part too is, the marketing budget really is your own money.
Correct.
There's
Yes.
no like budget that the company gives you.
Yes.
I laugh at some of like big pharma or whatever. They always say, if you want to work with big pharma budgets, go at the end of the year, because they know if they don't spend all their money, they're not going to get it the next year.
That's right.
I was like, oh, that's not how this world works.
Not at all.
Not even close.
No, most of my marketing budget is providing product to people for free to get it in people's hands.
Right.
And, at first you got to do that.
Right.
So.
Right. Do you 10 years from now, what would you hope that Stymie Golf Supply becomes?
I hope that it's still self-sustaining. I mean, that's the main thing that we're at now, where the money coming in goes right back out. But I put my initial investment in, and I'm able to sustain it. So, growth, and that we're in golf courses, and that when people see that maroon S, or see Stymie, they know what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's our thing, and my thing always, no matter what I do, is I want to create something of quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baseball program, I want to be a quality baseball program. I want my classes in school to be quality classes. I want the products that I produce and that we sell to be quality products. Mm-hmm. So whether the head covers that we're making ourselves, we have control over that, so we know they're going to be quality. But the tees we get from a great company that does quality stuff. And,
mm-hmm.
Went through a lot of different suppliers to find stuff that meets the standards that we want to put out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good lesson. I guess my last question, I'm curious, you started teaching when I was in high school, before any of the digital age, really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
have you, even in your macroeconomics classes, have you seen the jobs that a lot of these kids are going to come out and get didn't even exist when I was in school? Is what you teach different? Is the mentality different these days?
Well, what I teach hasn't changed hardly at all.
Okay.
From
All right.
Adam Smith writing Wealth of Nations in 1776, a lot of the microeconomic tenets have stayed the same, but there's still value in them. As far as the students are concerned, their attention spans are a little bit shorter, just because they have technology in the palm of their hand. The phone they have in their hand is 10 times more powerful than the computers that we had in high school.
Right.
They're very in tune to a lot of things going on that we probably weren't.
Sure.
As far as coaching is concerned, I think one of the biggest differences is the kids today are a little bit more sensitive, I guess. I don't know why that is, but it seems like you have to make sure that when you're giving instruction or even constructive criticism, that you remind them that you're not criticizing them as a person. You're trying to help them get better, and you're saying, that situation, you need to do this, and that what you did there was, we're not saying you're a bad person for doing that. It just so happened that you need to understand that, hey, we need to get better here. Yep. So kids have changed a little bit. They're still, they're just as smart. They're great kids. I love going to work every day, but it's just, you see these differences. You don't see them day to day, but when you take a step back and look at it, you recognize that things have changed, and a lot of it has to do with the technology and the immediacy of everything that they have that we didn't have. True,
very true. So tell the audience where they can find your company.
All right, so we are on Instagram at Stymie Golf Supply is our Instagram handle.
Yep.
And the website is stymiegolfsupply.com.
I'm gonna open this and show, because we have a video too. But so the main business, like the hats, are not the main business. Tell us more about this product.
Right. So this is a valuables bag that you can either put tees and ball markers and things in, and you just kind of keeps it convenient storage and just cinch it up and put it in your bag. Yep. Or some people, we call it a valuables bag because a lot of people put their watch and their wallet and their cell phone in here. It's got a really nice inner fleece padded layer that keeps it safe.
Yep.
So, some people use it for their tees and ball markers and things. Some people use it for their valuables. But then the other product is the head covers that they're just stylish, way. It's to keep your driver, hybrid, or fairway wood safe.
Yeah, so they don't rattle around in your trunk like mine do.
Yes, exactly.
So what's the Instagram handle?
Stymie Golf Supply.
And the website?
Stymie Golf Supply. StymieGolfSupply.com.
Got it. Okay. And so, guys, if you are golfers out there and you want some really cool gear, as you can see here, Stymie Golf Supply. Anything else before we wrap up?
No.
I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's
Absolutely.
a lot of fun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool.